Hello, flat earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. Just chilling under one of the trees in my garden and contemplating whether becoming a tree would be one of the ultimate incarnations or reincarnations on the earth. I read a story once. It was a science fiction novel, and it was about these people studying a tribe on a far-off planet. Kind of maybe Avatar-style thing. But this tribe was a bit of a mystery, and one of the human crew members died. And this tribe cut open that person's body and kind of spread it out on the ground. And they'd put a sapling in the middle of the body, I suppose, around the chest or the heart area or whatever. And so, of course, at first, these human explorers or researchers were under the impression that what had been done to their colleague was atrocious and showed signs that the tribe was obviously dangerous and hated them. But it turns out that this tribe revered trees, because what happened was when a tribe's member died, they do that to the bodies, plant a sapling in the body, and the spirit goes into the tree. And then when the tree grows up to a mature age, all the while being very conscious of its role as a tree, as part of the community and a former human being. And then eventually, when it's mature enough, the tribe's people will then have a ceremony and ask for the tree to produce certain things for them. So-and-so needs an axe, or so-and-so needs a staff, or whatever, some planks to make his house. And so the tree that was once one of their tribe's people knowingly gives up these things, these tools for them, for the tribe's people, and then it then dies as a tree, but of course it lives on in the tools and everything that was divided up amongst the people. So of course the story highlights our very kind of materialistic view of the world and lack of any real thought or desire even to find out or think about or contemplate the purpose of this life. But if you are following this path of awakening and connection to the earth, then you will be more still. You spend periods of stillness, right? And of course and that's very difficult to do when you're not conscious, or when you're not making the effort to be conscious of or aware of all the thoughts. Meditation, basically. And you can meditate in any task, your job. It could be a meditation. Driving can be a meditation, yeah. But it's that observing of the mind and what the mind is thinking and how it's making you behave, and the emotions that it's welling up inside you. So obviously stillness is the aim, because when you are still not necessarily in body, but that's one aspect of it. As I said, you don't have to be still in the body, but still in the mind. And because you're detached, you're being an observer, you're observing the body-mind from another place inside, from that place of consciousness, awareness. Okay, so of course, for example, monks they dedicate much of their time to meditation, and some of these monks that really get to that point where they have made a very, very solid connection with, for want of a better word, the universe, nirvana, as they put it, I suppose, then they will maybe become motionless, and they will just sit in meditation towards the end of their days, not eating, not drinking, just motionless, and eventually the breath will leave them. And it's quite often the case that you end up with this mummified body because the monk during his last weeks or months or whatever was hardly drinking or eating, and there's nothing, the body just it doesn't get moldy. So there are numerous stories of this, and even you might have seen these castings of Buddha images with the body of someone inside. So that stillness in the body is the ultimate, and the mind is the ultimate freedom, I suppose. Freedom from this material world. You've ultimately re-established that connection with the universe. And with the earth, I suppose, is more real, more down to earth. So then, wouldn't it be an honor, or a kind of a next step, to become a tree, much like this one we see here, yeah? And there's obviously the tree is growing, and but it stays in one place. But if the tree has awareness and a sense of purpose, which plants surely do, because they will strive to survive in the most extreme conditions. But look how many benefits a tree brings to the surroundings. First of all, it's shade here, okay, which is a wonderful thing and very much needed in this environment. It's home to birds. It gives food in the form of fruit. It's also home to spiders. There is a spider web up there, probably you can't see it there. It's home to ants nests. They gather the leaves together and they make their nests. You can maybe hear some birds. There are other plants and flowers that grow on it. There's moss, there's insects, ants. And they become very familiar with their territory, the branches and everything. The tree also provides oxygen for us. It holds the ground together with its roots. Yeah. There are so many beneficial things a tree does. And they do have a strong will a lot of the time to stay alive and produce their fruit. So, a tree ultimately sustains so many lives, insects, and of course there's a symbiotic relationship going on there. And now you can hear over there trees being cut down, which is kind of ironic. That's the way it goes. So, is the death of a tree as tragic as the death of... I'll try and block that sound out with my hand a bit. Is the death of a tree as sacred as the death of an animal or a human? Alright, let's see if that's a long break in the neighbour's tree massacring. But we're talking about being connected to the earth, and how a tree or a plant is obviously connected to the earth, and maybe communicating with the earth and other life. And we humans find it the most difficult to re-establish that connection. Of course, those among us who are maybe tree huggers or environmentalists are considered nutters, but of course that compassion and desire to reconnect with the earth or stop destroying the earth is usually misdirected, and people become embroiled in fights and protests and what have you. But this is the thing, isn't it? The protests are just part of the machinery. You're allowed to protest, but it doesn't mean that it will make any changes. And just like the tree, oh dear. Alright, let's see how long this lasts. You can't actually see what's going on. Hang on. Oh. But just like the tree standing alone, or the papaya tree over there, doing its thing, producing its fruit, feeding the squirrels, the birds, and us. They all have a purpose. Everything has a purpose on this earth. It's interconnected. We've got symbiotic relationships. And you can extend that to the sun and the moon and the stars, if you like. They are part of, maybe an organic mechanism of the movement that is involved in any life form. Nothing is static, really. So there's always movement going on. So the sun and the moon, they fulfill their purpose. And of course, it's obvious that it's life-giving. The sun is life-giving for the trees and almost everything on the earth. So is the air, and the moon affects all kinds of things. It's not just a gravitational pull. And of course, females are often more connected, and as a rule, in general, maybe less these days, because so many women are becoming disconnected as men are, with chasing their materialism. But you see, if your purpose is to give life, then that is a wholesome purpose in itself. It is a sole purpose and doesn't need to be questioned too much. Whereas, of course, in a kind of male machine-like mindset, then there is less of a connection to that miracle of giving birth. So, maybe the purpose, ultimately, everything that grows on the earth honors the earth by going back into the earth as a rule, unless we destroy it or whatever. And we seem to be spending a great deal of our time trying to do the opposite. We could be living in a modern world that is harmonious with nature, with the energy all around us. another thing about this kind of human condition and our confusion about who we are and where we are. Of course, there are many theories and stories or things we could imagine about what might have happened to us and the earth in times gone by. We don't really know, we just don't know. So ultimately, many of us will go down the rabbit hole, and it's a crazy roller coaster ride, twists and turns and dead ends, and then eventually you come back up again. But there's a difference in the mindset. You've seen the bare workings of the machinery. You understand and accept that there are psychopaths in the world, there are narcissists, there are things that could be considered good and evil, but ultimately when we are detached from those beliefs of good and bad, we become neutral, because we see, and the only thing we can see in reality in our existence in any given lifetime or over several generations is birth, growth, death, decay, rebirth. This is where we are. And I think when you're at a certain level, if you are walking a more awakened path, then you feel that you're going in a more fulfilling direction. You appreciate the now. There's less worry about the future, and there's less depression about the past. And there is more presence in the now, and the ability to enjoy and appreciate those things that occur now in what life is only one long stream of nowness. So anything in the future or in the past has to be made irrelevant, or naturally becomes irrelevant when we are totally detached from all the baggage and all the worry. Yeah, and everything just is. It's the Tao. And that, of course, is maybe what Taoism is just the isness. Or even Buddhism, it just is. And that might sound very boring, but no, it's not, because it is enthralling. It is the innocent perception, as it were, just like a child, where you constantly see the world as a new place to explore. You know, you might have spent summer days under a tree like this, but you might not have done it for years and years. But when you were a kid, you would have noticed the sun glinting off the leaves. You would have noticed shadows and the way they play and make images. Yeah, you will have noticed all sorts of things, the colours, and you will have been lost in a world of wonder. And that's the thing, you get to that point where you are present and enjoying the innocent perception. Then you are living without stress, without worry, without depression. You're living in the now. And maybe that is simply the ultimate goal. Thank you very much.